أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. We're gonna inshallah continue with the stories from Jurayee Az Darya, stories about ulama and scholars as narrated by Ayatullah Sayyid Shubayri Zanjani. We are still on volume 1 of this book. There's multiple volumes, and we're not even close to finishing these stories. But last session we ended off at Akhund Khorasani, and I said that there are a lot of stories in this chapter, and yes, there are a lot of stories, but I just realized that some of the later stories have to do more with Akhund Khorasani's son. So I might kind of skim through them very quickly, or maybe even skip some of them. But the next story that Sayyid Zanjani narrates about Akhund Khorasani, he says that Aqa Sayyid Abdul Aziz Tabataba'i narrates that Akhund Khorasani and Haj Aqa Raza Hamadani were roommates for a short period of time, or for a period of time. Aqa Raza Hamadani is also another great scholar of his era, and that these two were roommates in the dorms that they would be living in for a time. One day they see each other, and Akhund Khorasani says to Aqa Raza that you are extremely talented because you can take very, very complex and complicated and deep topics, and you can dumb them down for people. You can make them very easy, and people are able to understand them, understand the concepts. And then Haj Aqa Raza Hamadani replies back to Akhund Khorasani, and he says, you're also extremely talented because you can take very simple topics and you make them so deep, you go so deep into them that nobody understands what you are saying. So I'm not sure. Oh wow! So the date that says in every story has a date when he narrates the story. It says 27th of Sha'ban, 1428 Hijri, before the Fajr prayers. Before the Fajr prayers. So this is a story he was telling before Fajr Salat. So it doesn't say the location. It would be nice if they had written the location down as well. Is it in the Haram or where are they? But anyways, Akhund Khorasani, his most famous book that we study is Al-Kifaya. And Kifaya is, the text is very complicated. And it is, some ulama have said that, he just overcomplicated some of the discussions. But it is, sometimes he takes easy topics and he goes so deep into them and starts analyzing concepts on such a deep level. At the end, you're just wondering, what is he talking about, right? So, but Aqa Raza Hamadani is saying, you're also very talented. You can take simple topics and make them super complicated. But he could also be, it's probably, I don't know if he was joking or being sarcastic, but it is also perhaps a compliment that not everything needs to be left at a surface level. Many simple things, actually you need to go much deeper into them to really, really understand some of the discussions properly and really analyze them from all aspects. So that's something that Akhund Khorasani was known for, and is very talented in doing that. Now, the next, as I said, the other stories are more to do with his son and stuff. So actually, the next story, very briefly, I'll just mention what it's about. So, he says, Agha Zanjani says, Agha Muhammadi Gul Paygani narrates from Agha Wahid Khorasani, Ayatullah Wahid Khorasani, and he hears from Agha Mirza Ahmad Kifayi, who is the son of Akhund Khorasani. He said, our mother was very, very sick, and it was very severe, and someone told us that, there is somebody who is familiar with the occult sciences, and he may be able to sort of help you out. Anyways, long story short, they end up going to this person, but they want to really test whether this person is serious or, like, is he like a fake or a fraud or something. So they go to him and they try to test him, and they say that, do you know what our intentions are? So he tells, he tells them that so there's two of them together, two individuals, and he tells them that, well, your intention is that you want to ask about your mother's health and whether I can cure them. Another person that is with him, his brother, he says to him that, well, you're asking about where Imam Zamana is, where the 12th Imam is, and he kind of responds to both of them. So he says that, your mother will die 3 days later, and basically that's what happened as well. So it's just a story to do with Ayatollah Akhund Khorasani's son, and then also talks about Akhund Khorasani's son's lessons, and they were also very good, and so on and so forth. So it's not anything to do with directly to do with Akhund Khorasani. So we will move on then, and we will move on to basically the next scholar, who is number 17. And actually, I have his sort of entry over here as well. Ayatullah Shaykh Muhammad Taqi Isfahani, famously known as Aqa Najafi, who passed away in 1914, which is 1332 Hijri. Okay, so this is him, right? His entry is basically over here, his family tree and all of that. So that's about him on Wikishia. Okay, what is the story? There's only one story that he has. It's a 2-3 page story. He says that Agha Jawad Zanjani, who apparently hears from Agha Mahdi Hayri Yazdi, the son of Ayatullah Hayri Yazdi, and he narrates from Agha Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Asar, that Shaykh Muhammad Taqi Isfahani, who was famously known as Aqa Najafi, had been exiled from Isfahan to Tehran. Why? Because Aqa Najafi was very, very vocal and adamant and aggressive when it came to doing Nahi Anil Munkar. Okay, and to the extent that he had given a fatwa and an order that all the, basically he said, Dastur Mindad ke Babihara Bokushan. The Babis are, it's a lengthy discussion, but if you just Google up the Shaykhis, the Shaykhi school of thought, and what is the role of the Bab in it, and who are the Babis, you can probably find a lot of information on that. But it is sort of like a mystical, it has a lot of mystical and ghulu type tendencies in their idea. I mean, they might not agree with that, but that interpretation, but that's what it is. Okay, very mystical and so on. So as I said, I can't really explain the whole what is the Babi and what is Shaykhis over here. But anyways, he gave the fatwa that these guys need to be killed. Okay, this is the Qajar era. So generally speaking, these type of fatwa, the sultan, the salatin, the rulers, they did not like these type of fatwas. So he was called to Tehran a couple of times. And then one time when he was called to Tehran, they sort of kept him there so that he kind of becomes overpowered by the ulama of Tehran. So he goes to Tehran, and over there he starts to give his lessons, and he also used to give a stipend, and through the stipend basically his classes became a little bit more organized. Over here there's a footnote as well, and the footnote says that so this is footnote is basically Sayyid Zanjani is also mentioning this. He's saying that in another report, most likely he's saying maybe I heard it from Agha Pasandide. This is the name of a scholar. I heard from him that what did he hear from him? He said that Shaykh Muhammad Taqi Isfahani, this Aqa Najafi, had announced that any students who want to become mu'ammam, anyone who wants a turban and a libas, they can come to me and I will give them the turban. So a lot of students ended up going to him. They got their turbans, and basically they were considered to be part of his class or his students and so on. Anyway, this is just a footnote. So moving on. So this is Kazim Isar. This is the scholar who is called Sayyid Muhammad Kazim. He's quoting this. He's saying that the lesson of Aqa Najafi was such that in the beginning of the month it will be really packed, and then throughout the month it would basically become a little bit less, and then the end of the month, which is also the beginning of the next month, the population, the sort of student attendance would become very busy once again. He says, Sayyid Muhammad Kazim, who's the one quoting the story, he says, I have also attended Shaykh Muhammad Taqi Isfahani's dars, his lessons, He says during one time or one time period, the government really wanted to belittle Aqa Najafi because he was becoming really well accepted in Tehran. So they really wanted to kind of belittle him. And they encouraged some students to go and critique Aqa Najafi in his dars and to show him as basically not a very serious scholar. Okay. So these students started to do the critique in his classes, regularly. But he was also very smart. Aqa Najafi was very smart. So he figured out, he kind of guessed that, the way these students are critiquing me, they are just here to kind of provoke and to incite a chaos over here, because this is not a natural critique. So one day he goes on the mimbar, on the pulpit, and he said with a Isfahani accent that do not take Taqi. Taqi, he's kind of pronouncing Taqi, right? Shaykh Muhammad Taqi, his name was. So Taqi, probably the reason I'm saying Taqi because it has a kasra in the text. This is probably how the Isfahani accent is. Do not take Taqi very lightly, because Taqi has memorized the Kutub Arba'a with their text and with their sanad, with their chain of transmitters. Kutub Arba'a are, obviously, if you're watching Iqra online and you don't know Kutub Arba'a, then you shouldn't be watching Iqra online. Okay, so the four major books, Usul al-Kafi, Man La Yahdur al-Faqih, Shaykh Tusi's two books, Al-Tahdhib and Al-Istibsar, the four main Shia books basically. He said that I have memorized them, their entire text, and also the chains of transmissions for them. And then he says, go and bring these books and you can test me. So this Sayyid Muhammad Qadim Asar is continuing the story. He's saying, look, that was the end of the week, so the weekend came, and then we kind of met again on Saturday. And on Saturday, he went on the mimbar again, and he basically started to say again, hey, you guys were trying to critique me, come, bring the books, test me, so, I can show you. So he says, I brought, Sayyid Muhammad Qadim is saying, I brought Al-Kafi, someone else brought Tahzeeb, someone else brought Man La Yahdur al-Faqih, like we brought the books out. And he says, I opened up a chapter in Al-Kafi, which is not very much read, and it's not a chapter that you're kind of referring to all the time. So he says, I opened up Kitabul Luqata. Kitabul Luqata is a chapter in fiqh that has to do with lost and found. Either lost and found property or lost and found people. Usually it's lost and found children. Okay, we studied, actually I studied this chapter in fiqh in school, and it was actually very interesting. So there's some hadiths on this chapter that you don't really go refer to these ahadiths most of the times, right? Because majority of the hadiths you're gonna read are like tahara, salat, saum, hajj, zakat, these type of khums and so on. Like, who looks at luqata? So he says, I started to ask them, and then he started to read the ahadiths from Kitabul Luqata that have to do with luqata, page by page, with their text and with their sanad. Then I asked from another chapter of Al-Kafi. He did the same thing. Then someone asked from Tahzeeb, and then someone asked from Faqih, and he basically used to read the matan and the sanad from memory. And we tested him from different ways to make sure that it's like, not a coincidence, or there's no cheating or something happening. Maybe we're asking him the chapters that he just happens to have memorized, but no, we were convinced that he basically knows. So Aqa Najafi says, I had no memory. I was very weak in my memory. But one time I went to the haram of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Sayyid al-Shuhada, and I complained, and I did tawassul. I complained saying that, look, my memory is so weak. And if I don't have a memory, my memory is not strong, how can I serve Islam? And I don't think I can do anything for Islam. And then over here, there's like a comment here saying that Inhan nakal be ma'na. He's saying that I'm transmitting just the kind of sort of meaning here. Like, this is not the direct quotations of Muhammad Taqi Isfahani. In summary, he did tawassul, and basically I was granted this strong memory after I made this dua, and he had basically memorized the four books with their matan and their sanad, and he would read them, he would narrate the narrations as if he was reading them from the book. When he came off the pulpit, now that the students realized that he had been blessed by the tawassul of the Imam al-Hussein and from the Ma'sumin, they basically surrounded him and they started to kiss his hands and seek tabarruk from him. And basically he became very, very popular in Tehran, so much so that the government realized that our whole plan backfired. And then they kind of sort of invited him again, and they told him that, hey, listen, if you need to go back to Isfahan, there's no barrier, you can go back to Isfahan. And obviously that was his sort of city, so he decided to go back to Isfahan, and that's what happened. So once again, Aqa Zanjani at the end says that this story, Aqa Jawad Zanjani, most likely, he says most probably, he probably heard it from Haj Agha Mehdi Hairi Yazdi, and he must have heard it from Ayatullah Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Asar, and so on. So that's kind of like the story of this scholar over here, Sayyid Muhammad Taqi Aqa Najafi Isfahani. And over here also there's a story about, it says that he was very adamant on Nahi and al-Munkar. Actually, interestingly, the Wiki Fiqh is quoting from, Wiki Shia is quoting from Jurayee Az Darya. They're quoting from Ayatollah Zanjani. So look how this book is basically a sort of reference material for even Wiki Shia and so on. Anyways, let's go to another chapter, chapter 18. And this is very short. Chapter 18 is extremely short, even though it is about Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi, who was a very big scholar. And if you watch the video where I made, I believe it's a members only video, about 6 very important books of the last century. Al-Urwatul Wuthqa was one of the books that I mentioned, and this is written by Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi. And if a scholar became famous for the book that they wrote, in the Hausa culture you call them Sahib. Sahib means the sort of author, companion of that book. So nobody calls Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi with his name. In the Hausa they'll just say Sahib Urve, the author of Urwa. The most famous is probably, let's say, Sahib Jawahir. Who remembers Sahib Jawahir? Sahib Jawahir's name. Half the time people don't remember the names. So Sahib Jawahir, Sahib Demidanam, this Al-Urwa, and so on. So there's a very common way to address people in the Hausa. So what does Aqa Zanjani say over here? This is, as I said, so Tabataba'i Yazdi passed away around 1919, which is 1337 Hijri. Okay, 1337 Hijri, just over 100 years ago. Aqa Zanjani says that I understand Kifaya much more easily. Kifaya is the book by Akhund Khorasani that I was just talking about. He overcomplicates it. He says, I understand Kifaya much more easily, but some of the writings of Sahib Urve, which is Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi, he says, I can't figure out, I don't have the energy to figure out what is he saying. Whether it is written in Urwa or in other works of his. And he says in some of the writings that he has written, there is some, it's not comprehensible, and there are some contradictions that I cannot resolve them, or I cannot reconcile them. It looks like there are some contradictions in some of his writings, and in the Hausa you try to reconcile the ulama's apparent conflicts when they are writing. You do husn al-dhan and you try to figure out, maybe they meant this, or this is how you can explain what they meant here and here. So Aqa Zanjani is saying that I try to do that, but I can't. I'm not able to sort of explain why did he say this here and why did he say something sort of contradictory somewhere else. Then he says, Haj Agha Murtaza Hairi transmits from Sayyid Hussein Hairi that he went to the presence of Marhum Sayyid Sahib Urve. He went to him and he said to him that so and so big scholar has done an ishkal, has critiqued this matter from your book, Al-Urwa. You have critiqued something in Al-Urwa, and I tried to defend it. Okay, who's saying this? The Sayyid Hussein Hairi is saying this. So Sahib Urwa says to him Magar Ishan Urve Mara Mifahmed. Right? So Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi himself replies back and says, hey, does he even understand my urwa? And this person who is trying to critique me, does he even understand what I'm writing? Can he even understand what I'm writing? He doesn't have he's basically saying he doesn't have the capability or the skill to even understand my writing. Okay, so, I just want to mention something on the side here. Usually in this series, I try not to make too many comments inside commentaries and stuff, even though I have a lot to say about some of the stories. But it's just I just want to read the stories. But over here, I do want to mention something, right? Because this kind of relates to my field in education and pedagogy and stuff. In the traditional Hausa, it is not, yani, the more complicated a text is, the better it is, actually. Right? The sort of more concise and complex, and the more meanings you can stuff inside fewer words, the more skilled and the more talented you are considered. The more, sort of next level your scholarship is considered. Whereas, let's say today, we don't like that type of writing. If somebody writes a book where I have to sit there and decipher the text today, in our day and age today, if you give me a textbook in school and I have to sit and spend, 10 months to figure out what you're saying, that's not a good thing. That means you're just your way of writing is just so complicated, you're wasting time. This is how we look at things today. But in the traditional Hausa, it's the complete opposite. The more, things that they can pack into one page, the better it is. I remember in Sharaf Luma, in Kitabun Nikah, I don't want to take the time to open up the page and stuff. There is after Kitabun Nikah, the book of marriage, when he finishes most of the rulings, there's a case study that comes. There are like a couple of case studies that Shaheed Awal and Shaheed Thani. Shaheed Awal wrote Luma and Shaheed Thani wrote a commentary on it. There are a couple of case studies that come in that, right? 5-6 case studies that relate with marriage. There's one case study that I can never forget, and that's why it just came to my mind right now. It has to do with a man. It's a court case that a man is basically saying that a certain lady is his wife. But that lady is denying it. She's saying, this man is not my husband. And then another lady is saying that this man is my husband, and then the man is saying, well, this other lady is not my wife. How do you sort of solve this court case? Okay, so it's a thing. Now, Shaheed Thani explains something in that, and he writes it in like one line. And I remember we sat there in the class just deciphering that one line. Like, what did he mean over here? Because he just said it in such a strange way that you just sat there trying to understand, like, okay, this is what he really meant. And it was like, and it took the teacher took a whole period explaining that one line. But that's how it is, right? So the concise, and that could be due to they knew that paper is not easy to get. The way they're writing, they had to write shorter, quicker. There's all these, the context is different. Today we don't even care. You can spend paper and paper. You can write paper pages and pages. You can type stuff, so you're not really worried about wasting. Like, that idea is not associated with us, wasting paper or wasting if we're writing more things, it's not like a waste. Whatever, we'll just publish a book, we'll get a digital copy of it or something like that. That's how we think. So we do not associate these concepts with writing more, right? So that's how they would do it. That's how they would do it. And that's why it's very interesting that despite that culture, these ulama wrote volumes. So that's why you can imagine why the traditional sciences, it's so difficult to actually study them, because not only are they writing so concise with depth in like 1-2 lines, there's so much depth on like half a page, and on top of that they are writing volumes. So imagine how much you have to spend your time just trying to understand them. And as I said, we're not critiquing them for their pedagogy or their way of sort of conveying the meanings based on our sort of context today. That's just how they did it, and your job is to kind of learn their ways and understand how they would write and how they would convey meanings and all of that stuff. But does that mean we have to write books in that way today? I don't believe that. I do believe we should write books in a way that is more relevant for our day and age today, and make the meaning easy for people to understand. Okay, so that's kind of how it, so that's the whole culture. That's why Sahib Urwa is saying, does that person even understand what I'm saying? So you cannot even understand what I'm saying. It's a good thing that he's saying that, hey, my book is so complex, you need to be a very advanced student to really understand and pick up on what I'm saying. Now in the Hawza, there's a whole culture of writing new books on mantiq, new books on usul. They're already published. Some of them are being used in the Hawza. And what is the whole sort of idea behind them? Besides sort of newer topics that are also part of those books, but also just easier to understand, easier writing. Shaykh Sadr tried to do the same thing. His usul is an easier way of understanding usul instead of making it so complex, right? Where's al-halaqat of Shaykh Sadr and where's Kifaya? There's a, as they say in Urdu, Zameen Asman ka farq. There's a earth and sky difference between the writing of Akhund Khorasani and Shaykh Sadr. Shaykh Sadr is way easier to understand. So this is what Akhund Sayyid Tabataba'i is saying. So this was just a side point. I'll mention the last story over here from Sayyid Zanjani. He says that one of the stories that has to do with Sayyid Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi is narrated from Haj Faqihi. I don't know who this Haj Faqihi is, and there's no footnote on it either, because many of the names, or almost all the names, have footnotes with their full names and their, when they died and all of that. Who are they? He says that Haj Faqihi says that there was a scholar in Basra who was the representative of Marhum Ayatullah Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Yazdi, and he was very well accepted in Basra. And he would receive all the money, like the khoms and any other wujuhat, any other sort of money related stuff that had to do with marja'iyya and all of that. And he would spend the money in Basra. Like, he wouldn't collect the khoms from people and then take them somewhere else. He would spend the money in Basra. And then one day, Sayyid Kazim Tabataba'i Yazdi, the Ayatullah, he sent a telegraph to the merchants of Basra, and he says that this individual is no longer my representative. But the merchants of Basra replied back to the Ayatullah Yazdi, Tabataba'i Yazdi. Okay, so Ayatullah Yazdi is saying this scholar is no longer my rep. The people of the city, the merchants, replied to the marja. What did they reply to him? Nahnu arafnaka bihi wa ma arafnahu bik. That we know you, O marja, because of him, because of this scholar. And we do not know you because of him. Okay? He's saying that, we do not know him because of you. And we know you, O marja, O sahib urwa. We only know of you because of this scholar that's here. It's not that we know the scholar because of you, O marja. Meaning it's the opposite way. Now, you can look at this from a different way, but I'll actually go to a thing. So, the sort of this Jurayee Az Darya, this book, Jurayee Az Darya, published by Muassasa Kitab Shanasi Shia, the sort of founder and the director of this is the scholar Shaykh Reza Mokhtari, or Ustad Reza Mokhtari. Very well-known scholar in Iran, not even just in Qom, very well scholar in Iran. And when I started this series, Jurayee Az Darya, back in January, February, I actually got a voice message from him, just sort of appreciating that I'm doing this, and he gave me some advice and tips on how to sort of narrate the stories and stuff. So thank you for that, Ustad Mokhtari, if he is gonna watch this again. But there is actually an article on imamkhomeini.ir, which is actually a article or an interview, is probably by Reza Mokhtari, by Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin Mokhtari. Okay, this is Reza Mokhtari. This is actually the founder and the director of the institute that published Jurayee Az Darya. Okay, this is the scholar. Okay, what is this article about? This article is about بررسی روند اصلاحات حوزه در زمان امام خمینی در گفتگو. So it's just about talking about the reforms and reforms that took place in the Hawza and the sort of stages of it in the time of Imam Khomeini, and Reza Mokhtari is being interviewed. So over here, he actually quotes this story and he explains what this statement from the merchants of Basra meant. Okay, he actually explains it. Okay, so Imam Khomeini, he's talking about Imam Khomeini, right? So he's saying Imam Khomeini used to believe that in every city and village there should be a well-known scholar, and then people should really know about his life, and people should have really seen his family life as well. They should have seen how he lives with his family. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Okay, people should know his family life, how he is, and he should be a very, very well trusted individual by the community over there. And his job should be basically being the link between the Maraji and the people of that city. And he quotes some people. He says, مثلا آقای صدوقی بعدن آقای خاتمی در Yazd, in Yazd, آقای اشرفی اصفهانی in Kermanshah, and آقای دستغیب. آقای دستغیب شرادی, the author of the famous book Greater Sins, Gunah Kabire, the book that's there in Shiraz. These people had direct interactions and relationships with the people of that city, and the people had also fully tested and tried these scholars. They knew these ulama, inside out. They know about them, they know their lives, they know their history, they know their family life, and they were very, very trustworthy individuals. Okay? And then he says the people actually look at these ulama and these great people such that even if the marja taqlid in Qom were to nullify this trustworthy scholar, people who have sort of experienced living with that scholar, that representative, they will not readily accept the marja, what the marja says. So over here he quotes the story. He says Aqa Shubayri Zanjani has said that when Ayatullah Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Yazdi, the author of Urwa, wrote a message to the merchants of Basra, and he says that my representative in Basra is no longer my representative, and you should now have a direct relationship with me. The merchants of Basra wrote a letter back to him saying, hey, we don't accept we don't accept this from you. And they said to him that, hey, we only know you because of him. It's not that we know him because of you. We know you because of this scholar. This scholar is the one that we really trust. ما اصلا شما را با ایشان شناختیم اما ایشان را به شما نشناختیم تا شما او را رد کنیم و ما بپذیریم. So he says that, یعنی اگر این ارتباط روحانیت با مردم محفوظ باشد, if this relationship between the scholars is maintained between them and the people, مثل حرف مرجع و آیت سید محمد کاظم یزدی هم نمیتواند آن را رفی کند چه رسد به رسانه های بیگانه و فضای مجازی. So basically the whole interview is trying to say that don't if scholars in the community have a good relationship with the people, they work directly and with the people, they're with them, not holier than thou and on some pedestal, people are going to trust them more. And he's saying this media and the propaganda that makes the ulama look bad and horrible and weak, he's like, look, so he's saying the marja's statement is not going to have any impact, let alone this media and the propaganda. Why? Because people have done, look at the word he uses. He says, Mardumi ke zindagi ura lams karde hain. They have, lams is touching. Okay, they have felt his life. They have seen how he lives. They have a relationship with the scholar. He says, why would these people just listen to anybody else? They know about the marja'iyya and the hawza because of this scholar that they have seen in their entire lives. They trust him more than anyone. So actually, it's a very important and a beautiful point and a big message for the local scholars, right? And their sort of relationship and what type of relationship they should be having with the community, right? It should not be that a scholar spends years and years and years in a community, but doesn't really have a relationship with them, and then overnight, something happens, and this community just very easily distrusts that scholars and moves on to somebody else or some other propaganda or something, false or some propaganda. It happens, unfortunately, in our communities. But if a scholar actually has been with the community day in and day out and worked with them and has a direct irtibat, it says irtibat, like a relationship with them, then forget the media and the propaganda or random fitnas. Reza Mokhtari and Aqa Zanjani is saying even the marja, is going to have a hard time convincing these people about, what they should be doing. So I will wrap up this story here for today, this episode here for today. And inshallah, the next episode we'll talk about Mirza Muhammad Taqi Shirazi, okay, which is also a couple of pages long. And then we have Hajj Mirza Muhammad Arbab, and then so on. We also have Ayatullah Mirza Naini and Hayri Yazdi that will come on. Inshallah, I will try to record them soon, and then I will look forward to seeing you in a later episode. Do check out the members only videos as well. There's a lot of content on there. You're probably missing out if you haven't signed up. There's a lot of content. Alhamdulillah, I've been able to put up quite a bit. And then it will keep you busy for a long time. There's a lot of content on there. But if you haven't signed up yet for the members only portal, check it out, please. And do subscribe and like and share and comment on the videos. I do read the comments. Try my best to get back to the comments as well. But other than that, inshallah, keep me in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll see you all in a future video. Khuda Hafiz.